everybody. Welcome. I'm Kevin Leja. I am on the leadership team for Indivisible Bellingham. I know a lot of you, and it's good for you all to be here. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It's an honor to welcome you to our in-person meeting. We have all-hands meetings or in-person meetings every third Monday, and we encourage you to invite your friends to come along, and especially the ones that are out there and don't really know what to do anymore in this situation that we're in. It's nice to be able to be in a room with friends. Special thanks to our long-running PA system volunteer guru, Albert Snow, who makes the sound, and tonight the video. We're going to have him. He works for all kinds of events around Bellingham, and he really does us a great honor by being here and handling our sound and video. We at Indivisible Bellingham acknowledge that this beautiful place in which we live, Whatcom County, is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Lummi and Nooksack peoples, the original inhabitants of the land who are still here and who continue to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. And we humbly offer this land acknowledgement with gratefulness to their enduring care of our shared lands and waters. May we honor and nurture our relationship with our Coast Salish neighbors as we shoulder our shared responsibilities to their homelands where we all reside today. For those of you joining us this evening who might not be that familiar with us, I want to tell you our mission statement. Indivisible Bellingham is united by the principles of fairness, inclusion, tolerance, and a just society for all through nonviolent civic engagement, political involvement, and consistent pressure on our elected officials. That's it. You notice that in that mission statement, it's all about action. That's what we're all about. So we're not a coffee klatch here to drink coffee. We're here to think about the ways that we can make our society better, that we can support democracy, our Constitution, and make this a better place. But that's been hard lately. It's been really tough. We've organized and supported a lot of actions since the 2016 election, and we've been going for that long. I mean, it's been, I think there are 3 original members of our group that are still on the leadership team. We still have some people that were with us from the very beginning that aren't, but still do things with us and are here tonight. We appreciate that. As a group, we agree with Joan Baez that action is the antidote to despair. We'd like to thank those of you who brought canned goods and other items tonight for the Bellingham Food Bank. We also ask that any monetary donations you'd like to give to the food banks or any other resources for folks in Whatcom County who are struggling right now, you do so directly. We have a list on the resources page of our website, which is indivisiblebellingham.org. Not BellinghamIndivisible.org. It's Indivisible Bellingham. Indivisible's first. The work that Indivisible Bellingham does also requires some funding, and we welcome any ways that we can defray the costs of our activism. We're an all-volunteer, nonprofit organization, get by on the goodwill and generosity of you and our members. We have rent for this meeting space, costs for our website and an email program. We occasionally do an ad in the paper. We have printing costs, occasional security needs for public events, and a lot more. We appreciate anything you can give. We have a couple of donation buckets that are going to be going around tonight. If you can't afford something, that's fine too. We appreciate anything that you can do, any actions that you can help us take is good as well. So thank you for that. If you don't want to make a donation tonight, we also have a PayPal account and a Venmo account. You can go to PayPal you go to PayPal, call us your friend so that they don't take a percentage. Because if we're a friend, then we'll get the entire amount, which is nice to see. Just search for Indivisible Bellingham if you go to one of those sites and want to donate. And thank you. We're still deciding on a program for December. Traditionally, we have not had a program in that month due to holiday planning that seems to take precedence. So check our website and social media for any updates on December. I'd like to acknowledge for a moment the amazing actions of our teams during the past couple of months. Our rallies and events team and logistics team responsible for an amazing event on October 18th. Wow, our second No Kings rally. Let's give them a hand. Our immigrant support team continues to help provide rapid response to ICE and CBP actions in the county, plus driving family members down to the Tacoma detention facility and also to Seattle for judicial hearings. Our amazing postcarding group has 336 members now. They work tirelessly on getting out the vote in swing states before the election, prior to election day, and we're actually ramping up the postcarding next year, obviously, for the midterms. So if you're interested in joining, see somebody at the back table and let them know that you're interested in postcarding. I'd also like to thank one of our newest leadership team members, Vicki Thomas, who's right here, who has planned this meeting and who's lead on our events and mobilizations team. Okay, and I think we've got a couple of other things we want to feel good about. How about those election results? You know, not only for California and Pennsylvania and Virginia, which we wrote postcards to, but Mississippi and Georgia, wow, and Texas, school boards, all, you know, public officials all over. It was a blue tsunami, and it was nice to see that after all this has been going on for the last few years. And Whatcom County, a supermajority on the county council, awesome, and progressive wins on the city council. Our elections team is going to be gearing up to support candidates here at home and also in swing states next year. Next year is the midterms. It's a really important election. And in 2024, one of our team members actually went down to Arizona and did canvassing down there in purple districts and was successful. So if you know anyone that's interested in doing that this coming year, maybe you know somebody in another area that you could stay with them, a family member or an old acquaintance in a swing state, you might want to do some canvassing. We can tell you all about that and how to get involved. Still in the planning stages, but we're helping people who want to canvass in swing states, and you can also go to the back table and ask about that. So let's see a show of hands. How many people have been to an all-hands meeting before here? Okay, that's most of you. That's great. Thank you for that. How many of you receive our newsletter every Monday morning? Great. Okay, our newsletter is where you'll find news, events, and actions, most of them taking place in the next week or two. It's a great way to start your week on a Monday morning. It comes out every Monday morning, and there are local, statewide, and national actions that you can take or events that you can go to. And there's always usually a little bit of music at the very end. And for those of you that don't get our newsletter, if you go to our contact page on indivisiblebellingham.org, you can fill that out and we'll put you on the mailing list. We only send one email a week, and you can always unsubscribe if it's too much for you. But I think you'll find the newsletter to be something worthwhile to find in your inbox. And make sure that you add us to your contact list so that it goes to your inbox and not your spam folder, because that happens. So we'd like to start off tonight with a nice ballad. For those of you who got your newsletter this morning and made it all the way to the end, you've already heard this or seen it. Please feel free to sing along.
We say, oh, up the right. Say, oh, up the right. We say, oh, up the right. Say, oh, up the right. Dip your tyrants in a river of ink. Smash that statue, make the people think. No paper palaces and puppet strings. No thrones, no crown, no way, no kings.
They wave that scepter made of cable news. Here's the thing, kiss the ring or pay your dues. We don't bow to a counterfeit twit.
We hit,
we punt,
we sing,
we spit.
They gilded up the palace with a Walmart throne. Sold our freedom wholesale to a fat megaphone. Release the fire. Now bury the receipts in your gold ballroom with your dumbass tweets. Trump wants a medal for the lies he sings. Nobel called back, they don't crown clown kings. Ice at the border like busted springs. Hidden badge, cold hard, unlawful stings. If truth is treason, ink our treason on the wall. If courage is a crime, come back and book us all. From docks to deserts, from the slums to the hill, we built these streets and we pay the fucking bill. No kings, no thrones, no way, no crown. Get the hell out, you MAGA clowns. We won't stop until freedom rings. No crowns, no thrones, no way, no kings, no crowns, no thrones, no way, no kings, no crowns, no thrones, no way, no kings. We say, oh, up the right. Say, oh, up the right. We say, oh, up the right. Say, oh, up the right.
Pedophiles locked up like a dragon's horde. Corchesters juggle with a plastic sword.
7 wars and 8.
Yeah, in your dreams, still hear real mother screaming, real scream.
Gnome looks like a twat in a cosplay cape, yelling off with the heads at the fairground gate.
Trump's goons are anything but squeaky clean. Holman's lunch bag is looking mighty green.
They sell us fear on a payment plan, then they tell us no when we know we can. We aren't just pawns for would-be kings. You'll feel our power when you hear us sing. No kings, no thrones, no way, no crown. Get the hell out, you MAGA clowns. We won't stop until freedom rings. No crowns, no thrones, no way, no king, no crowns, no thrones, no way, no king, no crowns, no thrones, no way, no crowns, no thrones, no way, no kings, no crowns, no thrones, no way, no kings. We say, oh, up the rock. Say, oh, up the rock. We say, oh, up the rock. Say, oh, up the rock. His time may be up, there's a fade on the magazine. His
Minions cry rebellion, we clap back with Epstein.
A judge picked by Teflon Don has ruled against his demands.
Will we find in some small way the rule of law still stands?
Fuck ICE, fuck Trump, evict that chump.
See this?
Our fists built to resist. We've got 2 eyes. We see all lies. Truth won't die. It multiplies. No kings, no thrones, no way, no crowns. Get the fuck out, you MAGA clowns. We won't stop until freedom rings.
No crowns, no thrones, no way.
No kings, no We say, oh, up the rock. Say, oh, up the rock.
That's pretty lively. How many times do you see hear a rock song with bagpipes? So our main topic tonight is how to win the disinformation war. As mentioned in this morning's newsletter, the vast majority of countries on our planet view disinformation as an existential global threat. We'd like to welcome tonight's featured speaker, Dr. Ira Hyman. If you have questions for the good doctor about the state of the world, at least as it applies to dis, mis, and malinformation, please raise your hand. We'll send somebody with a piece of paper and a writing instrument if you don't have one, and when you finish writing, hold up your paper. It'll be collected and collated with others during or after his presentation. We will have a Q&A afterwards, but we want your questions on paper if that's okay. Dr. Hyman has graciously offered to provide written answers to questions we don't get to answer tonight. He'll get those back to us and he'll share them on our resources page on our website. Dr. Hyman is a professor of psychology at Western Washington University. He's an applied cognitive psychologist with a focus on attention, memory, I almost forgot that one, and how people come to believe false information. His regular contributions to the Psychology Today website are published in his Mental Mishaps blog. Please welcome Dr. Ira Hyman.
I'm a little shorter than Kevin. I want to thank you all for having me here today, and I want to say how lovely it is to be here with you, and that I'm happy to be here. It's good to be in community with you. And I think that we need to acknowledge that as we talk about disinformation wars, how important it is to be with people with whom we share values. I'm going to talk a little bit about disinformation today as we're walking through this. And what I want to be able to do is talk eventually about how we want to win the disinformation war. And the first thing we have to do is acknowledge that we're losing the information war right now. I'm not going to go through all the ways in which false information and disinformation has contributed to what's happening with our health system, or what's happening with science, or what's happening with immigration, or what's happening with the climate. You probably already know those things. But it's important to recognize that these things are happening because we're not winning the information war. And I'm going to note this in this sort of fashion and information because it's deeper than just dealing with false information. It's doing a better job of sharing good information. And so the second thing is to say that whatever we're doing isn't effective. We're losing this disinformation war. We haven't found a good approach to stopping disinformation, and we're not being as effective as we need to be at sharing accurate information. So that what we're doing is not functioning effectively. The way to go after this, then, is to take what I like to think of as what the youngsters like to say is a yes-and approach. That is, that yes, we'll do that and. Yes, we'll do that and. And we keep adding more things in if we want to be effective in addressing the problems of disinformation and misinformation. I want to start by just defining disinformation in the way that some of us academics like to think about it. And the way to think about this is not just a single bit of false information, but that it's an overall narrative, a frame, a way of understanding a problem domain. And so we can think about these disinformation campaigns and conspiracy theories as an overarching way of organizing a set of information. These are supported by various claims. Some of those claims are true and some of those claims are false, but it's bits of this information that are organized into this narrative and into this overall frame or way of understanding a problem domain. And so oftentimes the misinformation are those little bits of information. But the disinformation is this overarching campaign that's trying to get you to believe something that's deeply untrue when we're looking at it. We have lots of understanding about how people judge these individual claims. Repetition makes you more likely to believe it's true. Showing a picture with it, even if it's not illustrative, makes people more likely to believe it's true. If it fits with your worldview, you're more likely to believe it's true. If it fits with the overall narrative. We know a lot about how people judge whether or not they think that bit of information is true. But the key thing to keep in mind is even some of those things are actually true when we're looking at it. And so if we are thinking about these bits and pieces and this disinformation, we also want to recognize that underlying a lot of disinformation campaigns and conspiracy theories are stereotypes and bigotry, just to be completely blunt about it. For most of the things we're looking at in every conspiracy theory, there is an underlying bit of stereotype attached to it. And part of what that's involved with is trying to activate emotional responses for the audience. And in activating those emotional responses, they're not trying to make you happy, they're usually trying to make you angry or fear various people or various actions. It's actually, anger is one of the ones that the social media companies aim for because it keeps people online longer. So it is one of their favorite emotions to go for. So if we're thinking about an overarching sort of disinformation campaign, I'm just going to use an example today, the white replacement conspiracy theory. This is the idea that there is a group of elites who are trying to bring in more immigrants to replace Americans and to make it so that the Republican Party will never win an election again, and those sorts of campaigns. Underlying this are both true and false information. So that if you're looking at some of the true bits of information, you can look at the census report from 2019, which noted that the white population is projected to shrink as a proportion of the overall population of the United States, partly due to falling birth rates, but really due to the fact that the mixed race group of people will be the largest group of people eventually in the future. You can also see that and so that's actually true, right? But there's also a lot of false information that gets presented as well. So Tucker Carlson on his show on Fox News, when he was still on Fox News, it's worse now that he's on the internet on his own. And over 400 episodes said various things and had guests on who are amplifying the white replacement conspiracy theory. And you can find these arguments from pretty much every conservative journalist, every conservative media, every conservative politician. So that it's this bits and pieces of information that supports this overall narrative. And when you then ask the public about this, which the Associated Press did in 2022, they asked this as a survey. They said, do you agree with this statement, that there's a group of people in this country who are trying to replace native-born Americans with immigrants who agree with their political views? 32% of the overall population in this sample agreed with that statement. If you look at just Republicans, over half of Republicans, the majority of Republicans agree with this. So this is an effective disinformation campaign that we're talking about here. But disinformation campaigns, the other thing to keep in mind, it's not just the overarching narrative, it's not the bits of information, but it's an intentional campaign. There are political and media elites who have a political and or economic goals. So some of them are economic goals with corporations trying to sell you things or trying to stop climate change work. Some of them are political goals, as there are individuals who are trying to get and retain power. The goal is sometimes to bias you, maybe to get you to believe the false information, but sometimes just to do what's referred to in the disinformation sphere is muddy the water. That is, make it so that you're not sure what the truth is. That you feel uncomfortable trying to make an assessment, and also you're not sure what the experts think the truth is when we're looking at this. A lot of what the political and media elites do is throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, and then they keep using the stuff that sticks. And even if nothing sticks, it still leaves behind a stain. So that you start to doubt what the truth is when we're looking at these sorts of things. And there's an audience. There are people who are the targets of these disinformation campaigns. It's voters, it's consumers, it's people who are the victims of fraud. These are the targets of disinformation campaigns. But that audience is an active audience. And I really want to emphasize this, particularly in the modern era. That it's a participatory system. So that audience is also sharing some of the information, but they suggest additional details. Some of those details may be true, some of those details may be false, but those details get picked up sometimes by people in that political and media elite. They find those other details out there, and then they share those around, and they weave them into the overall narrative. So that it is this participatory loop that's involved. And my guidance for this comes from Kate Starbird down at the University of Washington in the Center for an Informed Public, who talks about the participatory nature of these disinformation campaigns. So if we're looking at the white replacement conspiracy theory, maybe you remember from last year the bit about the eating the dogs or eating the cats. This was actually a bit that was posted online in social media by just a person in that Ohio town who said that a cat was missing and was wondering if the Haitian immigrants were eating the pets. And then it got picked up and spread by right-wing media, J.D. Vance and some guy who was running for president at that time. And so these things get repeated, you know, and yelled on screen because it's this loop that's involved. And when we're looking at this, your identity matters for the targeting. It's connected to your sense of self. It's connected to your social group and your group membership. And so if you're a member of this group, you want to believe these ideas that are being shared, and you also want to share them and to contribute to the discussion. And so this overall system here is trying to reach you through your identity when we're looking at this. And it's this that my friend Kate Starbird calls the right, can I say it? The right-wing bullshit machine. The right-wing bullshit machine when we're looking at this. It's this overall network of spreading information, false information, lifting up bits and pieces from other people and spreading that around again, weaving it into this overall narrative that's targeting you based on yourself and social identity, and also really manipulating your emotions. And this is what's going to make disrupting the system so difficult. It's more than just fact-checking some of the supporting details. In order to disrupt the system, we're going to have to do a lot more work than just that. And so I want to talk about now that I've defined disinformation, how do we actually win this disinformation war? And there's a handout with my set of advice on this for most of us. And I think about this in terms of advice for other academics like me, and I'm actually giving a talk at an academic conference on later this week on this, where I will have a different set of advice that's targeting them. I think about this as advice for people in the news media. I think about this as different sorts of advice for people who run social media or for progressive politicians about what they need to be doing. But I also really like to think about it as advice for all of us. What things can each and every one of us, if we're not in one of these groups who has a different role to play, what can we do about this when we're looking at it? The first thing is not to contribute to the problem. And that means that we need to actually take advantage of our critical thinking skills. I really recommend to you the SIFT method that Mike Caulfield and some of his colleagues have promoted, and they actually teach this in elementary, middle school, and high school to students there. And it's an acronym that's for STOP, investigate the source and the claim, find trusted coverage, and trace back to the original if you can. I want to focus on just two of these right now that I want you to really pay attention to. The first one is the stop, the S part, but I rarely think of it as slow down as well. Whenever there's a new event that captures the media, don't feel like you have to share the information immediately. Slow down. If there's a crisis, there will be people who are pushing disinformation narratives around that crisis. They will be connecting it to narratives that they're already sharing. And they'll be using it in that fashion. And so you don't need to contribute to that. I don't need to contribute to that. This is actually one of my friend Kate Starbird's basic advice: slow down, because the rumors are not going to be reliable at first. Wait for better information. And when you are trying to evaluate information, finding trusted sources is a critical thing, and it's something that all of us have to actually do. Who do we trust for information? What news sources do we trust? And this is something you have to kind of update routinely. Because, you know, your news source may get bought out by Jeff Bezos. And you may no longer have confidence in the Washington Post. And you have to be willing to update your understanding of what are your reliable sources. And even a news source that you may trust in some respects, like I generally trust the New York Times, although there are problems with how they run things. But there are some people who I really trust, and there are some people who I don't trust at all at the New York Times. And so you have to think about who are your trusted sources. There are people I follow on social media that I value for news, for providing different news than I would see in some of those mainstream media outlets. And so all of us need to find trusted sources. And when we're trying to evaluate a piece of information, we check it against multiple sources. And we see how those multiple sources are evaluated. I have concerns when we focus almost exclusively on critical thinking skills, because it's not enough. This is the yes and part, right? It's good, it's important to do this, but critical thinking can go awry if we start to criticize reliable information because we've come to trust somebody who's not particularly reliable. It can lead us down rabbit holes sometimes. People who believe conspiracy theories think that they are the ones who are being thoughtful and responsible and critical. So it's important to be careful with your critical thinking. And what's more troubling here somewhat is that it lowers your overall confidence in everything. Is that you can get to the point where you're critical of everything and you're not sure that you can trust anything. And so it's risky. It's important to recognize the limitations of critical thinking, particularly if you're swimming in a cesspool of information. Not much is reliable there. But this is part of the reason why I will always argue that we need to fully fund education, because we need to do a better job of teaching kids all the way through, all the way K through 12, higher ed, to be better critical consumers of information. Yeah, that's a basic thing there. But let's talk about how to debunk false information. When you do encounter false information, when you see somebody spreading false information, whether it's in a live conversation with people or if it's in an online conversation on social media, one of the basic recommendations is to use what's referred to as a truth sandwich, where you state the truth, you acknowledge the false information that's being presented, and then you remind your listener of the truth again. There are even images for the truth sandwich, and it's a slice of truth with some bologna in the middle, and framed by another slice of truth on the other end of it. So that it's really important to present the truth and to remind people about it as you're acknowledging the false information. If you're online, it's really usually pretty easy to connect to debunking information, to share a reliable source for people that they can go look at themselves, to look at that. But I want to make a note here that I'm going to make a few more times in this presentation, and that is, you're probably not going to change the mind of the person you're interacting with. And so a lot of your goal needs to be that you're speaking to the audience that's listening to the overall conversation. So that when I'm trying to have a conversation, sometimes I am trying to change somebody's mind, but I'm also aware that there are other people online who are seeing that conversation. And so that I may not think I'm going to change that person's mind, but I'm providing information for the overall audience beyond just that person who is going to be seeing that, both the false information and then hopefully the more reliable information. When you know that we're going to be in a situation where there's going to be a lot of false information, it's useful to do what is referred to as pre-bunking. So prior to any election, the people down at the Center for an Informed Public at the University of Washington, other groups, I will as well, be sending out information when we know what the sort of false things that we expect to see happening in this election cycle. Mostly because you've been warned about it ahead of time. The narratives have been being built, and so you can start your pre-bunking ahead of time as we're looking at that. And so debunking false information is really important. And so if you have a younger relative who's heard some of the rumors that vaccines may harm fertility, you say, look, vaccines are safe and effective. We know that. They actually do not harm fertility. Vaccines are really safe and effective. As a matter of fact, if a pregnant woman has a vaccine, it may provide some protection for the infant when they're born. And so it's really useful to do that sort of truth. What the lie is that you're worried about, and the truth again with this audience, I might go with a different one for vaccines. Vaccines are safe and effective. I know that you've maybe heard some rumors that there may be some harms that come from vaccines, but those are really rare and not likely to occur. Vaccines are safe and effective. As a matter of fact, vaccines may provide protection from the risk of Alzheimer's disease by lowering your risk of getting the infections which contribute to dementia. So, we can also use not just debunking, but use social truth queries. Debunking is frequently challenging because you may not have access to the correcting information. And maybe it's the sort of thing that can't actually be corrected, or at least it's not possible to correct it yet. And so social truth queries put the onus, put the burden back on the person sharing the false information. You say, where did you learn this? What evidence do you have to support this? Can you give an example of someplace where this happened? Is that person actually reliable? So that you can ask these questions. You can do it online, you can do it in person, and it can highlight when that person doesn't actually have the support for the claims they're making, or that the person they're relying upon may not be reliable, and it's just a rumor that they've heard. There's really good evidence that this is particularly effective for the audience again. Some of this work has been done by a former student of mine, Madeline Jauber, who worked at Western for a while as an undergrad and now has her PhD, and she's doing really great work on these social truth queries, both in the United States in laboratory settings and in some election situations live in Africa, both in Kenya and in South Africa. So it's really a good set of work when we're looking at these sorts of things. And so, you can ask somebody, well, who told you that there are people eating the cats and dogs? And where is this happening? Do you have an example of this actually happening? Is this rumor reliable? Should we trust the person you heard this from? Right? So you can ask these sorts of questions in a variety of contexts when we're looking at these types of things. More importantly, even than questioning each of those little bits of information, is provide better narratives. When we're looking at these sorts of situations, these narratives, these frames, hold the details together. And in any domain, there are multiple possible narratives that people can use to hold a lot of information together. With the immigration debate, this is white replacement conspiracy theory, or concerns about violence from immigrants and these sorts of things. But you can offer a different narrative. You don't have to play within the narrative that's being offered, the false narrative that's being offered. You can instead make a point that immigrants are what makes America great. Many of us, if we're not Native Americans, come from immigrant families originally. And so we can actually tie other bits of information to a better narrative. We can say, look, immigrants make America great. Immigrants start more businesses. Immigrants have a lower crime rate, actually. Immigrants are escaping persecution in the countries they came from many times. And so we can highlight the things that are wonderful about immigrants as we're looking at these sorts of things. It gives people a different way of organizing, a different way of seeing the problem domain that they're working in. You do not want to work within the false framework, within that false narrative. There are lots of failures here. Politicians are really bad about this. They try to talk about different ways. Yes, I'm against immigrants too, but just not quite that way. No, go with a completely different framing. You can't change people's views when you're working within the false narrative. It's really important to offer them a more reliable narrative. And it's really important to think about your audience as you're thinking about what narrative you want to share. There are other ways of talking about connecting to somebody's religious identity. I really want to highlight the Roman Catholic Church this week with respect to immigration, because the Pope came out with a statement last week about immigration and about recognizing shared humanity and the dignity of every human, and that this is really important. The Catholic Church in the United States came out with a similar statement last week, and most of the priests were making part of their sermons related to this over the weekend. So the Catholic Church has understood that there's a different narrative here that involves respecting the dignity of every human being. And it's really important to be able to shift our frames when we're looking at these things as we're talking about how to do a better job against disinformation. The other one that's really important that I think we need to work on is disrupting illusory social consensus. What's illusory social consensus? We tend to believe that other people agree with us on things. If I have an idea and a belief, I tend to agree that most other people must think that's true too. We also tend to judge consensus based on the information we see around us and what we see on the news. And we think that, well, if I'm seeing it on the news, there must be a lot of people who believe this. You can see this happening from the disinformation. That's one of the goals, is to muddy the waters and to disrupt the sense of consensus. But this is also one of the horrible effects of both sides journalism. Both sides journalism says, well, there's this and there's this. And some people think climate change is happening, and then I've got this wingnut who thinks it isn't happening. And they equate things too frequently. And it's bad, one of the worst aspects of our modern journalism system. And it leads to a situation where people oftentimes have false beliefs about how widely ideas are shared. So that in general, I can ask this question in a lot of places. What percentage of people in the United States believe the government should do more to fight climate change? If you ask the general public, they think the number is something like 35 to 40%. But if you actually survey whether or not people want it to happen, what you find is that it's substantially higher than that, almost double that number. That it's really more like 75 and 80% of the people in the United States would like to recognize not only that climate change is happening, but want the government to do more about it. And the reason we underestimate how widely our idea is shared is because of this false consensus based on the disinformation campaigns. So to disrupt it, social truth queries do a good job here. They just demonstrate that not everybody agrees with that person. They show the audience that the ideas may not be really widely shared. But the other thing is to do what you all are already doing, and that's show up. Go to the rallies, because you'll see other people agree with you, but it also makes clear that there are a lot of people who have this view and that are not comfortable with the current situation. Making the news helps do these sorts of things. The No Kings rally nationally, the numbers I've seen, between 5 and 8 million people showed up on that Saturday for the second rally. The coverage varied. It was much better in the local newspapers than it was in the national papers. But again, it was big news in local communities. And so showing up matters. And so you also want to disrupt it. There you are. At our Bellingham rally, there's me with the sign I made from one of our academic posters on the backhand side. I love these, suits that people are wearing around with. I actually, you go to these things all the time. I've been down to rallies in Seattle. I spoke at the Stand Up for Science rally in Seattle back in March. But I really like highlighting these costumes that people are using because it really disrupts the disinformation narrative. Portland's not burning. It's not on fire. They're not, it's not violence in the street. There are people dressed in Quran costumes. And they're making fun of the disinformation narrative. These costumes are really effective. Peaceful protests are really effective as well when we're looking at this. I would also love to find a way to recreate the feedback loop. The conservatives use this. That's what the right-wing bullshit machine is. But the audience to elite feedback part is broken for progressives. Politicians and media are not picking up on the messages that are being spread on social media. The media is not highlighting these progressive rallies. The diner interviews skip Democratic constituencies. I assume some of you go to diners sometimes and you could be interviewed for these sorts of things. I'm not really sure how to fix this if the politicians aren't listening, but if we want to recreate it, you got to keep calling, you got to keep writing those letters. You've got to keep showing up at these rallies. You've got to change your media sources to ones that actually listen, that are picking up on the messages, and maybe we need to change some politicians to some who will do a better job of listening to what the public has to say. That's not on my list of things that I have for you to take home. This is like one of my dreams, but I think we have to maybe change politicians that want to do all of this. And I'll stop here and try and answer any questions.
Are there questions? You have questions?
Anybody have questions?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'll ask a few questions while we're collecting others. If you have some questions, feel free to do that.
Somebody?
Thanks, Dr. Hyman. That was really enlightening, and I love the sift. I think that's really great. I did want to mention, has anyone here heard of Indivisible's Truth Brigade? Anyone? Okay, a few of you have. The Truth Brigade, I found out recently, is actually shutting down its website. It's going to be rolled into more of the things that Indivisible is doing, but they made a thing for the last 5 years about the truth sandwich, and it's a very effective way of working with misinformation and disinformation. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is that you seem to say that we ought to try and push back using the truth sandwich and other methods when we see something online that's not right. I think a lot of the Truth Brigade mantra was, if you see something negative, don't even respond at all, because there's an algorithm in Meta and a lot of the other social media that will amplify that negative thing, even if you're commenting on it in a positive way. So how do you deal with that?
I actually think I want to disagree with that advice, because the goal is to communicate to the audience out there. And if all they see are the false information, and they don't see anybody correcting that false information, then they're going to believe that that's the truth, and they're going to believe that it's widely shared. And it really is important to disrupt both the false narrative and to disrupt the false consensus. And the way we go about doing that is by responding. Now, you don't have to respond to everything, right? I mean, you should make that your whole goal in life. And I don't respond to everything that I see online. I don't have time to do that, but I do respond to some things. And it's also important to share good information. And so developing those better narratives is really a critical part of it, but you can't just let the disinformation stand unchallenged. And it's really important to challenge that false information that's out there. So this is a place where I think that the data show that doing so is important for the people who are seeing the information online. Again, I'm not aiming to necessarily change the mind of the person who's spreading the false stuff. I'm aiming to address the audience who's seen it. Yeah.
You know, the other thing too is where you're actually responding. If you're responding to, you know, somebody's blog or you know, just a random Facebook post or whatever, it has less effect than if you're actually responding to a news article or, you know, a Facebook post from the Washington Post or the New York Times or what, or you know, whoever. Personally, what I tend to do is I try and stay away from responding on a lot of the, you know, these blogs that get people angry. And when I'm reading and I see something that's a little biased in a newspaper article, I will try and contact the author of the article. I did that the other day with there was a Bellingham Herald article about the arrest that took place up in Ferndale of a citizen. Actually, he was a person that eluded a vehicle in a police chase, and he was arrested for that. But it turns out that the highway patrol person that saw the chase said that he didn't hit anything. It was a police car. It was an ICE car that actually hit someone. So, and that was, you know, it was pretty much a one-sided story that they came back with in the Herald. And so I wrote to the author of it, and I just said, you know, you should definitely cover both sides of this. This is what happened, and you've reported it before. Is that effective?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, you know, what we, you know, it's hard to know it's effective, right? So are you going to change, again, are you going to change that person's view? Are they going to update their story to make a correction? If they are likely to update their story and make a correction, then that can be good, right? If they're not going to update their story, then the only person who's seeing your correction is that person who's ignoring it. And so, you know, posting a comment at the Herald might be useful. I mean, I think a lot of this is more useful if you're talking to people you know. And so there's some advantage to responding to some things on Facebook or other social media, although, you know, I'm not on Facebook really anymore. I still have an account there, but I'm not there because it's accessible. And I'm not on, I don't go on my Twitter account anymore unless I'm checking on something because it's a Nazi bar, and I don't hang out in Nazi bars. So, you know, it's a question of choosing your environment and choosing your news sources. I mean, that's here too. So I hang out on Blue Sky, which is at least more polite at the moment. And there's still an algorithm there, but it's not pushing things. It's just a time-based algorithm unless you do something to shift it. So there's some differences amongst the social media things, but responding there, you're going to be interacting with people who already know you. And hopefully if they trust you when you are responding to a false bit of information, they're going to take what you have to say seriously. If I'm just commenting on something at the Herald, the people who see it are not often necessarily know me. And they may think that it's just another one of those cranks responding to these sorts of things. And so I think we're almost always better off working within the networks where we know people, if we're trying to do these sorts of things.
Okay, good, thank you. Yeah, I commented too. I remember in the No Kings rally, both of them actually, the first one and the second one, I was watching Como 4 News just to see what they would say. And I go to Fox News every once in a while to try and figure out what they're doing. I usually wind up, switching the channel pretty fast. But they had said that they were reporting on the Seattle No Kings marches. And they said that hundreds of people showed up. So I had to write them.
Maybe tens of hundreds.
Okay, so I've got a question about one of my favorite lines is Alfred Lord Tennyson, who lived in the 19th century, wrote, "A lie that is a half-truth is the darkest of all lies." And I really believe that a lot, because I see so much that is spun one way, that's kind of the truth, but it's, can you talk about half-truths?
Well, I mean, I think the way to think about these things is the nature of a disinformation campaign is that it does use truth, and it uses false, and it weaves it into a full narrative. And so it's debunking those individual pieces is never going to get at the overall narrative. You have to go after the overall narrative, and the best way to do that is actually to shift to a better narrative. One that's actually more based on reality, or at least based on your values, as opposed to the values that are being promoted by people you don't trust. And so the truth does get woven in, right? And, you know, half-truths, yeah, I mean, it's like what you used to tell your parents when they would say, hey, where were you last night? And you would tell them something that was true. And you wouldn't necessarily tell them every place that you were that night, right? And so, you know, I mean, there's, you know, we can talk about the Epstein files. Bill Clinton is mentioned in them. And if that's all I focus on, then it leaves you with that impression. And if I were to focus on maybe some of the other people who wear too much orange makeup, who might be in those files as well, it might give you a different impression, right? And so there are a lot of ways of lying. And again, the best thing is to try and share a better narrative when we're looking at these things.
Great, thank you. We've got some questions from the audience. What if the opposition is portraying what you say as disinformation?
So this one happens kind of reliably. I have been writing for the Psychology Today website for over 15 years now, and I've written about disinformation many times, and I have gotten my share of hate mail, and I've been told that I'm the one spreading false information. And for somebody who's that far down a rabbit hole, I'm not going to reach. But it's deeper than just that one individual, because you've got an entire system that is attacking people who are trying to fight disinformation. My good friend Kate Starbird has been called to Capitol Hill to testify before Jim Jordan's House, whatever they call it, the Un-American Affairs Committee, whatever the modern version of this is, right? And you know, and I know people who have, you know, had grants cut off. I have good friends who have had open records requests for all of their emails. These sorts of things happen because there are people who are arguing that you're the liar. And so, you know, I don't have a great solution here. I haven't found one that's effective. None of us have found one that's effective yet, other than coming back to our truth. And sharing a better narrative is about our only hope here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish I had a solution.
How can we respond to the mis and disinformation around trans people and children, so much as fake science?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is one of the places where you can come back to science to support you. I mean, it's not my area of science, but I know that there's good scientific evidence here. And gender is a really complex thing. But the other thing is that underlying all of these things, you've got to have a different and better narrative that's one that's tied to your values. And part of your, I'm hoping, based on the way that you described Indivisible and what I understand from Indivisible, is that you share values with me, which is that I value the dignity of every human being. And I'm going to promote that as my sort of first step whenever I'm having this conversation. And, you know, again, this is one of those places where I think that the false information, though widely spread, has not been widely adopted. Most people are not that interested in this. It's not showing up on the list of things that people are worried about in elections. It's an attack, and it's a constant attack, but the majority of people are not worried about trans people. They want everyone to be able to live their lives. The majority of people are pretty comfortable with, you know, marriage equality. The vast majority are comfortable with marriage equality. And so I think that we need to come back to a recognition that the majority of people actually probably agree with you on this. And so reminding people about their values is really critical here of sharing a different, better, value-based narrative when we're looking at this, changing the story. Not playing into, well, not arguing the details about trans, but instead arguing about the values that we share.
Yeah, it seems to be more their argument seems to be more about creating another, or the other,
Oh, always.
and fear of the other.
That's why we always know that
Even if it's a small percentage.
it doesn't matter how small the percentage is, if I can make them the enemy. And the people you're afraid of, and the people that you hate, and play off of that constantly. Yeah.
The free press is so important. What can we do to ensure there is a free press?
Don't let all of our planet. No, I think the most important here is to find the journalist outlets that you value and support them. If I were talking to media types, one of the things I would notice, I worry about both sides of journalism. I also worry deeply about paywalls. False information, disinformation campaigns are widely and freely available. News sources that spread that don't have paywalls. News sources with more reliable information actually cost money to do research and to do journalism, and so there are paywalls then. And that means that we have to support them. So we need to find the journalist outlets that we value and support them. We've traditionally supported National Public Radio. I have a subscription to New York Times. And when there's an article I really value in the New York Times, I'll do a gift link on social media so that people can see it. And there's some social media feeds that actually keep track of gift links so that you can see a lot of them. And that's sort of a fashion. It's a way of, I'm supporting, I'm paying, and I have gift links every now and then, and so I'll take advantage of them and make them available to friends, colleagues, or to the general public if I can. And so, find the sources you like, support the sources you like, so that they can continue to do the good work that we value when we're looking at this. And so you want free press. It's actually not free. It's free in the sense that we want them to be free to tell stories, but it actually costs money to do that sort of stuff. And I do worry about paywalls. One of my academic organizations, the one I'll be speaking at later this week, our journals are paywalled, but only for 1 year. And then every article is freely open to anyone in the world. And I think that this is a model that I would like to see more widely adopted in academics, but also more widely adopted by journalists. That there could be a period where there's sort of a blackout, that you have to be a subscriber to get it, but then how long should that period be before you make it widely available so that a lot of people can see it?
Thank you. I don't think that there is really such a thing as an unbiased source. I really don't. I think there are a few organizations that try that, but this goes to the next question. Can you give us examples, not of the extreme right, like eating animals, but easy to see misinformation of our own?
Yeah, this is one of those places where you do want to be careful, right? And I'm not going to play both sides here. One of the things I really want to emphasize is the vast majority of the false information is being spread by right-wing media at this point. And so I never, when I present, go with more liberal examples. Because if the majority of the problem, if 90% of the false information is coming from one side, then I'm going to focus on that 90%. And I'm not going to do a both sides thing where I say, but you can see it on the other side. I don't play that game.